Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Lone record, Reality Testing. Lone is a pretty versatile electronic music producer that hails from the UK, dropped an album a few years ago that I loved. I thought was one of the better electronic music albums of 2012, Galaxy Garden. And this record was a bit of a departure from the typically wonky, glitch hop inspired, occasionally house inspired music on his previous records. Yes, there were elements of house music on Galaxy Garden, but this record was so much more futuristic and colorful, hyper as well, songs reaching up into some pretty speedy tempos. And even though the canvas Lone was painting on was a very synthetic one, he added what felt like some very organic elements, what sounded like some metallic percussion, some hand drums, and these drums seemed to be playing Caribbean-style rhythms. This brought the record a really distinct flavor and an amped-up energy. And now, all of a sudden, Lone comes through with the follow-up to that record, and production-wise, compositionally, it is so far off the mark, I feel like I'm listening to an imposter. Is the issue on this record a lack of viscera? Is there less kinetic energy between the rhythms and the synths on this thing? Are the melodies less sharp? Are the tempos too slow? To be honest, it's a little bit of all four. All of these issues stack up into a painfully inconsistent and unmemorable record. Occasionally that upbeat, tropical, and electronic vibe comes through from a few years ago, but rarely does it actually live up to Galaxy Garden. Like the song Airglow Fires, which has this really awkward, punchy synth phrasing that makes me feel like I'm listening to some really clumsy Morse code over a house beat. Or a track like Aurora Northern Quarter, a song that starts decent, has a great groove, but doesn't really bring that much in terms of progression to keep the song interesting from beginning to end. It just sort of grows stale and grows dull. When Lone isn't trying to rekindle the same magic from his last record, he's taking detours into hip-hop instrumentals and glitch hop that is so toothless, he might as well be making elevator music. Songs like 2 is 8 and Meeker Warm Energy. The synthesizer leads on these tracks were written as if their creation were merely a chore, or like the melodies on these tracks were decided by just randomly choosing notes within the scale that fit the key of the song. It's like the melodies on these tracks were composed via some kind of incredibly boring, soulless algorithm. Occasionally there's a track here and there that sort of reminds me of a video game circa early 2000s, sort of like Nintendo 64 or something like that, just like on Galaxy Garden, but I don't really feel like I'm in the midst of an action-packed adventure or race. Rather, the instrumentals on this record remind me more of like a start screen, something you'd only be listening to long enough for the game to just begin. Again, the melodic compositions on this record, they're not that distinct, they're not that sharp, they're not that sweet, they're not really that anything. This record is lacking in a great deal of punch in comparison with Lone's previous material, and not even in such a way you would suppose this album is taking a more ambient approach or something like that, aside from the first track on here, which is a very ethereal opener. And rather than taking part in the track building and the track progression he did on previous records, here we're getting these really redundant instrumentals, and some of them are backed with really tedious, totally uninteresting vocal snippets that last a little too long. To me, this record is just so passionless, it's so bland, it's so background, it's so boring. I just really was not expecting this. Sometimes this thing is pleasant, but that's about it. I'm feeling a decent to strong 3 on this thing. Transition, if you've given this LP a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's it. Anthony Fantano, Lone, forever.